So in the last section, we finished setting up our full stack blog, but we do have one problem. When we go to our forum, it doesn't really look that nice, and also we're getting a bunch of warnings in our console saying a table cannot appear as a child of another table. And we're just going to solve this warning by getting rid of the table altogether. We will just display all of our posts in cards instead. And we will also animate them so they'll have a nicer looking transition when the posts render. So let's go back to our app and get rid of the imports for the table. And instead let's import the cards from Material UI. And the card is going to have three main parts: the actual card itself, the card content, and the card header. And we can also get rid of all the table elements in our render method and in the render post method. And let's also move our render post arrow function inside of our class this time. And we can get rid of all the table elements here in our render method. And now because our arrow function is inside of our class, we also have to add the this keyword to the render post element. Now we can just start off our render post function with an empty div. And if you remember from the last section, we already have the post set up in a card in our profile.js component. So to save time, we can just copy and paste it from there. And really, we don't have to make any changes to this. On the contrary, we should keep it the same so that there is a certain level of symmetry between our profile dashboard and our forum. We can now begin to apply a basic transition animation to our post. So let's begin by wrapping everything in divs. And then to our divs, let's apply a style property. And then we need two properties of the style to animate our posts. We need opacity and transition. Opacity is really how faded an element looks. And how a animation transition is going to work is that the posts are going to start at 0, so they're going to be completely invisible, and then they're going to become less faded over the 2 seconds, which is what we specify in transition. So in transition, we write opacity 2s, 2 seconds ease. So essentially it's saying ease into the opacity over 2 seconds. And again, ease is what's known as a transition timing function. So ease basically says that it's going to start slow, then it's going to speed up a little bit and then end slowly. And ease is just one of many other transition timing functions. There's linear ease in, ease out, and I'll link to a resource that lists all of the timing functions, but for now we can just use ease. And then let's now create a piece of local state to handle this opacity function, this opacity property that we just defined. So let's first start in the constructor and then do this.state equals and then posts. So we're going to animate by first saving all the posts we get from our server to the local state. And this will just make animations a little more reliable and predictable. Since they are in local state, the animation is just going to be a little bit smoother, since it's not going to be we're not just going to animate them directly right when we retrieve them from our server. And then we set opacity to 0, and this means all the posts are going to be completely invisible. Then we're going to use a helper function to change this opacity piece of local state to 1. And let's just do this.handle transition, and then we use a set timeout because we want it a little bit delayed. And then we simply just do set state and then opacity to 1. And let's just do a 400 millisecond timer. And then let's just create another helper function to save the posts we get from our backend to our local state. So we can just do add post to state, and we pass in a parameter of post, and then we just set the state to post, and then we use destructuring to flatten the array of posts. So that's the ... is a spread operator that just flattens our array, so we don't have an array within an array. And then we now need to call these functions, and we're going to do them in our component didMount lifecycle method. So we do this.handle transition first. Since it does have a 400 millisecond timer, we can put it ahead of the Axios request. Then we use our add post to state after the first .then statement. So we just do an arrow function, and then we do this.add post to state, and then we do this.props.post. Because remember, this is after our API request and after our dispatching of actions of the set post action. So since this is after we dispatch the set post action, our posts are already saved to the Redux store. So we can simply just access them with this.props.posts. And let's just fix a small typo here. Let's just get rid of that this keyword before handle transition. And this should be it. This is all we need to do to animate our posts. that we're getting from our database. And if we go to our forum, we see, yes, our posts are animating as we expected. Perfect. They're starting from invisible and then fading in slowly. Awesome.